Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and ladies and gentlemen, today we got to talk about Intel and how that ship is burning, ladies and gentlemen. Now I don't take extreme pleasure in doing this, but to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, when I built my ultimate Billy rig, some of the content that I've made in the last few years has been about, building my Linux virtual machine rig, okay? So whether it be my dream computer or showing you how to build Linux virtual machine, like gaming systems, where you can literally play full-on PC games in a virtual machine underneath the Linux kernel, and that's all thanks to things like passing through GPUs, right? So you could literally pass through a GPU, split a GPU in half, do whatever you want. Now, alongside that, I've always required having a pretty good processor. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this screen right over here that you've probably seen in videos, if I get the mic out of the way a little bit, you can see this is like a task manager for my system. This whole section right here is threads. Basically, threads that I've got on my systems, the amount of cores I'm sitting with. Now, the processor I bought was a Ryzen 9 5950X, about, I would say, honestly, like a few years ago at this point. And I paid around $800 on launch, okay? Today we're talking about an Intel processor that is so bad that it's been causing people to crash their video games for a year now. And you know how much that cost? $800 as well right now. In fact, that's on a sale. It's usually $1,000. Now, if you're buying a processor like this, you're probably what we consider an enthusiast. You're somebody like me who loves virtual machines maybe, who loves emulating PS3 games, and you need that raw dog CPU performance, right? If you're the average gamer who wants to play some Fortnite, some Warzone, this is a lot overkill for you, okay? So to give an idea, I build these virtual machine systems, I enjoy them, I stuck with AMD, and honestly, I even asked the question like a couple months ago, is there a reason to buy an Intel CPU at this point? And it really feels like it isn't. So obviously, if you've noticed, if you're in the market of investing, you probably noticed that Intel's stock has dropped pretty significantly in the last couple days, okay? It used to be trading at $30, now it's dropped to $21.48. Now, stock prices are one of those fickle things where obviously, they go down for a bit, but they always bounce back up, usually. In this situation, it doesn't really seem that way, because Intel has had a pretty rough time so far. Literally a couple days ago, apparently they had to slash 15,000 jobs just to keep up with their competitors in the space, NVIDIA and AMD. So 15,000 jobs, obviously, it's not looking good at the company. And they need to cut costs by like $10 billion in 2025. That is obviously a goal that they hope to be reaching. And when I'm making this video, when I hear 15,000 people have been cut from their jobs, I'm thinking 15,000 people that would love to talk about how fucked up shit is going on at Intel. So to give you an idea of how bad this situation is, right? Those specific processors that I was telling you, this is a game company, Alderaan Games, literally throwing Intel under the bus. Literally, they've titled this entire post, Intel is selling defective 13th, 14th generation CPUs. When anybody writes something like this, that is scathingly bad. So what they said is their team at Alderaan Games, who's working on this multiplayer dinosaur survival game, Path of Titans, has been encountering significant problems with Intel CPU stability. These issues include crashes, instability, and memory corruption, are confined to a 13th and 14th generation processors. Despite all the released microcode, BIOS, and updates, the problem remains unsolved. So they've identified 5 main areas. For the end customer, meaning you and me with our actual finished systems here, thousands of crashes on those specific CPUs. If you're running dedicated game servers, constant crashes and servers are going down. Are you a development team? Well, congratulations. While you're developing a game, you might have it completely crash while building or working on the game, making you lose precious time. Game service providers, hosting community servers, you're going to be crashing if your servers are running on those specific processors. Benchmarking tools, yeah, those could also apparently fail. So obviously, when you're reading something like this, clearly it's not a good look for Intel. And at least for this company, what they've basically said is they're swapping all of their servers to AMD, which experience 100 times fewer crashes compared to Intel CPUs that were found to be defective. So yeah, this is really, really bad. Obviously, it shouldn't shock anybody that this company isn't exactly on board. Now, when I started this video, I said, oh boy, this was mentioned about a year ago. Now, thanks to the lads over at WCCF Tech, they were the ones who made a pretty decent timeline that goes all the way back to December 2022 that covers all this bullshit right out. So how this first was effectively discovered is back in December 2022 on the Fortnite Battle Royale subreddit. One user mentioned this bug. They had an Epic Game System, Windows 11 Home, 32GB RAM, RTX 4090 Founders Edition, and mind you, I was considering purchasing this processor when I was upgrading my GPU in the Billy rig to the 4090. I'm actually glad I didn't. 3 Z790E Asus ROG Strix motherboard tried to verify game. So they got this error. Out of video memory trying to allocate a rendering resource. Make sure your video card has the minimum required memory. Try lowering the resolution and or closing other applications that are running or exiting. Now you might be like, wait, how does this have anything to do with the CPU, Mutahar? It's a video graphic memory error, right? Obviously it has something to do with the GPU. Wait with me. Bear with me right now. Let's go down to 2023. So in 2023, one of the big time releases were releasing games like Hogwarts Legacy, a lot of these CPU intensive titles. One post from r/PC Gaming Tech Support ended up basically listing that they had this i9 14900K CPU, 24 cores, RAM at 32, RTX 4090, pretty powerful rig. It's almost on par with my system. Obviously my CPU, Ryzen 9 5950X, a little bit older than this, but let's get back to it. When they tested 4 games, the Outlast Trials, the Finals, Red Dead 2, and Counter-Strike 2, they would sometimes get this out-of-video memory pop-up, right? So this is pretty common, especially even with these Unreal Engine games as well. So sometime in February of 2024, one user, Sebastian Castellanos, ended up basically saying that certain games running with Unreal Engine showed that during the shader compilation process, so typically nowadays when you're firing up recent modern games, you probably might see a screen that says, pre-calculating shaders or optimizing shaders or something to do with shaders. What that basically means is your CPU is going to be running at like 100%, basically calculating all of the shaders you are going to see in that specific video game for the first time. So that instead of facing micro stutters as you play, the game should in theory be a smooth sail all the way from the new game selection to the credit screen. So during this time, it appeared that individuals with that i9 processor, the 13900K and the i7 13700K, you had to underclock your processor because apparently these specific CPUs were prone to crashes. Players have been able to work around this by underclocking the performance core speed. So you have to actually reduce the overall speed of your processor, it seemed, in order for it to function. The stability was kicking its ass. So WCCF's editor at this point, Hassan Mushtaba, actually even said that when they built a new gaming PC with the 4090 launch, they upgraded the 12900K to a 13900K, and everything ran well besides the high temperatures that were within the TJ Maxx limit, but hit 95 degrees Celsius using a high-end cooler. Now, what they basically mean with TJ Maxx is when you're running a processor like this and it gets to that thermal junction point, like 95 degrees or 100 degrees, what the CPU will do will automatically reduce its performance in order to prevent damage. You typically shouldn't be reaching that temperature if you have a good cooling solution. That's just a lot of power being sent to a CPU and a lot of temperature rising through the ashes, basically, and you should never be getting close to that, okay? If you're touching those temperatures, you need to be better cooling your CPU. So obviously, look, after all of this, it really came down to these graphic card companies. They had to come out and basically say, it's not our fault. Our GPUs weren't to blame. It was actually more the CPU. According to the NVIDIA guys over here, Manuel at NVIDIA, what they had said was if your system is using an Intel 13th or 14th generation unlocked desktop CPU, and is experiencing stability issues, out of video memory error messages, crashes to desktop while the game is compiling shaders, please consult the following sites for troubleshooting assistance. And they started to link to the Intel community right here. And here you can see a whole bunch of actual users complain about those similar issues, all in Intel's camp. The reason I'm showing this again to you is to show you that this timeline of Intel's ignorance was happening for over a year, all right? This was never an okay situation. So obviously, after NVIDIA decided to throw them under the bus, rightfully so, Intel actually ended up coming out and basically saying, yeah, we're kind of looking into it. Obviously, they had to. So what had happened was after NVIDIA obviously rightfully threw them under the bus, clearly they had to respond. And so what happened was, to the Korean market at the time, all right, they ended up reporting to ZDNet Korea, Intel is aware of the problems that arise when running certain tasks, like shader compilation, on a 13th, 14th generation core processor for desktop PC, and analyzes them with major stakeholders. So now at this point, they clearly acknowledge an issue that they were selling very openly for no problem whatsoever, okay? Shady shit already right there. And at this moment in time, they started to actually rely on sending out updates. So what was actually apparently causing this issue? Well, what they had basically said was something known as the Enhanced Thermal Velocity Boost, the ETVB. Their algorithm was actually impacting the operating conditions for those specific processors. And they were basically developing a patch for that specific bug and working with motherboard partners to roll that out as quickly as they possibly could. It is not the root cause of the instability issues. As Intel and its partners continue working towards a conclusion, we want to make sure everyone is clear to basically get those default power settings. So yeah, it still wasn't entirely solved, but what was basically going on was microcode updates being pushed. Now, for anybody that doesn't know what a microcode update is, let me just give you a quick reminder and a quick little knowledge of it. Now, for anybody that doesn't know what a microcode update is, from time to time, Intel, AMD, or anybody that makes processors release actual stability and security updates to the processor's actual microcode, right? So what they do is they provide bug fixes, and again, they can basically give you critical updates and, stability to updated processors. So for instance, if you upgrade to a newer generation, or you upgrade your motherboard, you probably want to update the BIOS and the microcode so you don't run into issues. Like, for instance, your entire system blue screens, kernel panic, so on and so forth. You need to make sure you're updating your microcode. And what Intel was doing was providing the most up-to-date microcode that they could to fix as many of these issues as they had. So where it gets really fucked up is back in July of literally this year, one individual from the Hardware Times and editor said that after 3 faulty CPUs and 2 RMAs, Intel actually refused to refund one of these processors, even though that they were less than a month old. So according to the actual editor from the Hardware Times, they said that after that ETVB fix, they were crashing every other minute, were basically the highlight of their launch. And according to the event viewer in Windows, they had found 44,000 plus error events, okay? No joke, it looked pretty bad down the road here. Literally every minute, within the minute, there would be several of these errors that would just pop up. And so when they contacted Intel support for it, they basically said, yeah, we tried to reach out to you at insert whatever. Unfortunately, we couldn't reach you. We got an update from the concerned team. We understand how disappointing this situation must be for you. While we have gone above and beyond Intel's terms and conditions by providing a replacement unit, we regret to inform you, and this is the kicker, that we are unable to proceed with your request for a refund. Please consider this final reply. Dog, you are shipping defective fucking products, okay? People are spending hundreds of dollars on just your thing. There are people that could buy consoles, both consoles, for less than the price of this one fucking CPU, and you're still willing to fist them like this? Obviously, you should be providing a refund or fixing the product until it actually works. What do you mean you went above and beyond? The problem is still there. What the fuck? So at this moment in time, one of the things that came up was obviously Gamers Nexus. They ended up bringing in actual, claim with oxidation. They wanted to talk about the new microcode. And really it was because of Steve and his no-nonsense fucking attitude at Gamers Nexus that the situation really has blown up to the point that it has. And obviously Wendell from Level 1 Techs, a lot of people in the tech space that use these CPUs, I do, when I need to run these crazy virtual machine rigs, we want to make sure these systems are fucking stable. And for the price that you're willing to pay for them, they better be as stable as fuck. Okay, that's just the reality. Obviously, I can understand if, people go out of their way to overclock the hell out of these systems, but even people purchasing these processors and running them at a baseline level were facing massive problems. So obviously, Intel was pretty much ignoring this. And I would say they ignored this from my understanding until obviously very recently. Now the thing about Intel is they could probably ignore this and it wouldn't really matter. But obviously when their stock starts to tank and you got the investors crawling up your ass, then there are other issues that kick in. Like for instance, a class action lawsuit investigation. So on July 30th, 2024, consumers who purchased that Intel processor line who are experiencing instability issues can join this class action investigation, right? So what they had said was recent reports have highlighted instability issues. The primary cause of these instabilities has been identified as elevated operating voltages. Intel's analysis revealed that a microcode algorithm was incorrectly requesting higher voltages, leading to instability in the processors. The issue apparently does not stem from the earlier resolved via oxidation problem in their manufacturing process. So realistically, what they're alleging is the problem started right from the software in their system. Now at this point, other crazy articles were getting posted out. So The Verge posted this one that said, there is no fix for Intel's crashing 13th and 14th gen CPUs. Any damage is permanent. And I want to remind you, when you're spending this kind of money on computer hardware, you don't want to hear damage is permanent, okay? So according to Intel over here, they had really shitty responses, okay? So for instance, will Intel issue a recall? No, even though they should. Will Intel proactively warn the buyers of these chips about the warning signs or that an update is required? So what they said is Intel targets to release a production update to the OEM and will share additional details with patches at the time. They're also investigating options to easily identify affected processors on end-user systems. In the interim, as a general best practice, Intel recommends that users adhere to the Intel default settings on their desktop processors. But it's those default settings that appear to also be causing the issues. You know what I mean? Here's the thing. If you bought a processor and you purposefully jacked it up, you purposefully overclocked it to cause instability and damage, well, that's on you. But if it ships in a damaging state, what the fuck? And then, of course, will they halt those sales? No, they literally said no. They won't even perform any in-channel inventory recalls. Now, look, any company can have an issue or a defect whatsoever. That's not the story. That's not the outrage. The outrage is the shitty response that Intel has fucking had, where they are sticking their heads in the sand and letting people purchase these super expensive processors and ultimately leaving them with bricks in their hand, especially when it comes to people using these processors for the intended reasons, right? You're not buying this processor to browse the internet, okay? If you wanted to do that, your cell phone is plenty capable enough. People buying this processor are probably individuals that want to play the most high-end video games. Well, they're having issues. Imagine if you're a content creator where you obviously need to be using some really high-end software. You're probably going to be running into issues as well. So if you're working on production systems, writing code, running multiple virtual machines like I do all the time, then if your processor isn't going up to snuff, or if actually under load it starts to crack, then yes, that is a defective processor for the intended market out there. And Intel being as shitty as they are, this is obviously a sign that in the near future, or the future in general, I probably will never actually ever buy an Intel processor again. I think with AMD, it's pretty much solidified as the x86 processor of choice. But yeah, I know this video has been kind of dry, but to be honest with you, I wanted to really talk about it because this kind of a response from a massive company is honestly more than just insulting. I think it's straight up downright criminal at this point. And, going in forward, I don't know what the future of a company like Intel really is. When, at the end of the day, when it comes to processors, I think the market's kind of shifting in a way where, especially if you're on like a laptop market, like if you're somebody who's purchasing a laptop in 2024, you probably may never choose to buy an x86-based laptop unless you want to specifically play certain games. For instance, I've been using a MacBook Pro for the better part of two and a half years, and I would say it's probably the best laptop that I've bought, okay? It serves as a pretty good desktop replacement at this point with the M-series processors. Snapdragon Elite processors came out, and while they have issues, it's definitely not on the same level as where Intel is at. When it comes to this high-end processor market, the AMD processors that I am using seem to obviously provide a lot more stability. Even to somebody that is a chronic Linux user, and has been for years, it's obviously better for me to be using AMD processors simply because of how well integrated the software, the microcode, and updates are right into the kernel itself. But regardless of what you use, Linux or Windows, if your choice was to use an Intel processor and you spent this kind of money, Intel is leaving you out to dry with its most expensive product line out there. It's not like this is a manufacturing defect in an entry-level product line that maybe some could understand. This is in the highest-end enthusiast lineup. And that is just downright insulting, because those are the kind of people that are going to spread the worst possible message, rightfully so, about your company. So yeah, fuck Intel, it's imploding. And to be honest, I don't really see them coming back from this, unless they really get their shit together. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.